Hello, and welcome to the RC Industry Podcast. For those of you new to the show, this is the podcast where I interview the most influential people from the worlds of stand-up, comedy, TV, writing, radio, and today, design. This is part of a series I'm putting together of designers and illustrators and photographers who are all key parts of the behind the scenes in creating marketing materials for performers. And if you want to view the whole series, you can find it at, on the website rcindustrypodcast.tumblr.com, or if you want to go via the shortcut link, it's bit.ly/ATI designers. That's RC Industry Designers. I'm going to try and make them all like that, so you can find like the categories of designers, agents, reviewers, whatever I'm basically putting together. This is the first one in that series, and today I'm talking to Iszi Lawrence. It was amazing to chat to her. She is very open and very candid about what she does. She's very honest about the fact that she is a designer and painter, illustrator and amateur photographer, and enjoys doing it on the side of being a comedian. And she does it for, as she puts it, extra pocket money. So if you're interested in working with her, do look her up. She's absolutely lovely, and I've had a look at her work and it looks amazing. She's done some really cool stuff for different types of comedians, sketch acts, everything really. So don't feel like if you're not a comedian, if you're doing a play or something, you can't talk to her. I'm sure she'd be willing to talk to you. She just might not have the time to do it, and as a result can't do the work. But there are other designers on this series that might. So take your pick. She doesn't take on all work, and we discuss what work she's interested in and what she looks for in a project, and talk about things that you can practically put into place as a performer if you're looking at designing and developing your own promotional materials. I loved it. As a performer who has just applied to take part in the Edinburgh Fringe and is accepted to take part in the Brighton Fringe, it's really helped me out because I'm starting to think about posters and design and flyering and all that kind of stuff that most of us leave to the last minute, if we're honest. So it was good to talk to her about it this early on, and we had so much fun talking. We went off on a bit of a tangent. As a result, this podcast is split into two parts. This is part one of it, and it's episode 7 of the podcast in general. And the second part is all about branding as a comedian. It's all about thinking about what you're like on stage, how you present yourself, what you're talking about, how you can extend your brand through podcasts or through blogging or through anything that's online and is accessible and can help you reach a wider audience. She was really honest and open about that, and that's episode 8 of the podcast. So if you want to have a look around for that, it should be on iTunes or Stitcher or on the website, or if you go to rcindustrypodcast.tumblr.com, should have links there that you can't really miss it, or just search the website. It's very easy to find stuff on there. As always, if you want to follow the show notes, you need to go to the website. All the questions are there that we asked, all the people we talked about, and all the links and everything are there on the site, as well as links to her website. If you want to work with her, and she's lovely to chat to, so I'm sure she's just as lovely to work with, you can go to her website, which is iszi.com, and you can find ways of contacting her. She's also on Twitter and Facebook and all the other places where you'd imagine every one of us would be. And yeah, mention that you heard about it in the podcast so that she knows where you heard it from. Remember, this is the podcast about design. If you want the one about branding, go to episode 8, which is up at the same day this was up, so it's not like you have to wait around for it. Without any more delay, here is Iszi.
No worries. Oh dear.
Oh dear.
Can I just say I don't know?
You don't know?
I the answers to any of them. 42. There you go.
I feel like we should start recording on that. That's amazing as a start. As an opening to it.
Well, I've recorded all of this back chat, so.
Oh, okay. Well,
yeah.
I'll definitely just edit that as the opening.
Okay. I've literally got up, had a coffee, and I am now here. So hooray!
Oh, hooray!
So I am Iszi Lawrence. I'm a comedian by trade, but I also do a bit of graphic design on the side, and that includes everything from photography to poster design. I've done illustrations for some children's books, and I've done street art. So 2005, I was up at the Edinburgh Fringe when I was still at university, drawing Stephen Carlin and Norman Lovett's face on things in chalk and charcoal, which was an interesting way to spend the Fringe, but I probably made more money than both of them, so I was quite happy with that. And what else was I doing? What else have I done? Yeah, it's pretty much just logos and posters. So regular posters, I do stuff for Mirth Control. I do Fringe posters, so I've done some illustrations for people like Matt Dwyer and Matt Price, the people I'm allowed to mention, I think. And yeah, it's I tick over, I think is. I do a few comedy club logos. I've done some podcast art, some banner art for the internet, and I occasionally have my drawings in magazines. So very rarely, though, I do like special brochures. So I had to do a series of a magician called James Randi for the Amazing Meeting, and that got in. So it was in everybody's brochure and that sort of things. Also, when the Comedy Fix was going, I was drawing pictures of Michael Palin and stuff like that. So there we go. That's what I do. I don't know. I have no background in anything. I am pretty much self-taught. I did GCSE art when I was a kid, and I got chucked out about 2 weeks in, mainly because it was up against chemistry, and I wanted to do chemistry because chemistry is awesome, and also because I drew dragons over the still life picture I was meant to do for my coursework, which wasn't appropriate apparently. So I didn't take it up very seriously, and as a result, yes, I'm now qualified with an A in chemistry, but not in GCSE art. Will that do? I don't know what to say. I'd also like to point out that it is Sunday morning and I'm just sort of up. And when I say morning, okay, it's midday, but that is still morning. So
Morning for someone who had a gig last night.
Yes, indeed.
Okay. You do poster designs for Fringe shows.
Yes.
At what point in the process of having a Fringe show should someone seek out a designer? Because we all have to register quite early on, sometimes even before the show's written.
Yeah, I tend to think that when you register with the festival, they ask you to provide a little thumbnail. Yeah. And I think it's really important that that image in your thumbnail reflects the show, reflects also your social media and everything else, just so that people know what you are. So there's a recognisable little image. It's branding. It's quite cynical and horrible to say that, but it does, I think, matter. Even if you haven't decided and you've just put a picture of yourself in it and you might have a particular colour, you can say to your designer, or if your designer's any good, they'll recognise the fact that you've used that colour and that might reflect in the rest of your artwork. So be careful what pictures you send because, if you come with me and want me to do it, I will use those images that you've already got to carry on your poster work and other artwork. Does that make sense?
That does make sense, and that's half answers the question I was going to ask.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's fine. Honestly, answer these in any order you want. It's not a problem.
Excellent.
As long as you answer because the little square has always been something that annoys me because I can't work out what to put in it. In the brochure and program, I mean. And I'm really enjoying discussing with designers because it's not a lot of space.
No, it's not. I mean, you do want, I think, it's a very cynical thing, but the way our brains are is that we make faces out of everything. That is the way our brains work. So we see 2 dots and a line as a face because that is the way we're programmed. What's it called? It's called fuff. Oh, that's going to annoy me. Damn it, I can't remember what it's called. And I should know this because I'm a good skeptic and I understand it. But never mind. It's too early in the morning. Basically, I would say that faces tend to sell things more than not. If you have, in the unlikely event that somebody has seen you a previous year and wants to see you again and can't remember your name, they might recognise you just from that. But mainly, I think you want something that isn't, it's a close-up of something or it's an illustration because that way it's going to pop a lot better than something where you've got 6 different faces in it and they're all just, little pink smudges. I just think it would be, I don't know. It's a tricky one. I preferred it when they didn't have any images in it and it was just the type because I just think it made for a nicer brochure. But that's my cynical opinion on design. I think images are overused sometimes. I shouldn't say that as an illustrator, but there we go.
nor a photographer. You should probably be plugging your.
Well, I'm not. When I do photography, I do it as part of. So sometimes, I mean, I would always recommend going to a professional photographer. I do not consider myself a professional photographer. I have taken photos for projects, and I think there's a big difference. I think photography is a thing that you need to respect and needs to be its own thing. I do not have a studio. When I have gone out and I've photographed a few sketch groups, for example, and we went out on location, but it was for a specific album that they were releasing, and it was, it was part of it. And, it was the inserts, look at the guys in the pub, aren't they normal? Weird stuff. It was their idea, but we made it work and we made it good. But I do think, particularly headshots, particularly... there are certain, I mean, there are very good photographers and much better photographers than me out there, but because some people can't afford those and because they are very specific things. For example, I've got a friend called Phil who is not a professional photographer but is a very good photographer. He's an amateur photographer, and for my personal projects like my podcast, the Z-List Deadlist, I got him to take the photographs because I couldn't justify spending a huge amount of money on a podcast that doesn't really earn me anything yet. And then I helped, together we came up with a design idea and we did it on the cheap. Whereas if I was to get myself photographed professionally, I would go with, Andy or Idil or somebody like that just to make it look professional and to sell myself.
Yeah, makes sense. I should also say we've got Idil coming on
Yay!
a few days. She seems absolutely lovely and...
She's very talented. And I think a lot of people use her and I think that is good. I think it's always very difficult when you've got... Because you can tell, from a photograph who's taken it often. And particularly with Andy Hollingworth and with Idil, they've got a very distinct style. And I think that's great, but there is an argument, and I don't know if I particularly agree with it, particularly in Idil's case, because although she's got a style, there's a big difference between the different photographs she takes, but there is a sort of thing where you're walking past all these posters and you go, yeah, Idil took that's an Andy one, there's an Idil one. There's a certain, you can tell who took the photographs, and the danger is that everything ends up looking very similar. But fortunately, with a talented photographer, that doesn't happen.
That makes sense. So, what should people come to you for if not photography? It should just be the poster design.
Yeah, I mean, basically, I do. So I don't just do it for the Edinburgh Fringe. I do it for Brighton Fringe, Leicester Comedy Festival, things like that. People sort of say, I haven't got any image design thing. Can you help? And often these people have like a headshot already that they need to use in it because that's what they've used in the in the online stuff. And so I just work out a very easy way of turning that into a decent and interesting looking flyer. So say a comedian came to me with a headshot that he didn't particularly like, and he had several because they were taken a couple of years. They're a few years old and he thinks he looks silly in them, and he wanted me to make a flyer out of it. So what I did was I made a compound image of those and blurred a few of them so it looked like he was looking over his own shoulder, and it gave it some sort of dynamism, and then just put the relevant information on it and told him he couldn't have all his quotes on it because otherwise people wouldn't even read it. I think that's one of the big sort of bugbears with comedians is I need everything. Hey, 3 Weeks gave me 5 stars 6 years ago, so I really need that on that. No, you don't. You really don't. Often one very good quote beats 4 mediocre quotes. So, you do, because I'm an egotist. I want to have all my stars on there. I want, look, 5 stars! 5 stars from a magazine you've never heard of. You want that at your top just for your ego's sake, but actually if you're trying to sell something, you want to be very clear with the thing you're selling.
Yeah, I agree with that. For me, personally, I hate the star rating system, so I try not to use them. But I also feel sometimes...
Says a man who's got a lot of 3 stars.
3 and 4.
Sorry, I'm teasing you.
No, it's fine. No, not all of us can have 5 stars.
No, that's true. That's true. Literally all my 5 stars are from the weird Edinburgh things that only exist in Edinburgh. And I've got 1 5-star from Louder Than War, which is an it's not American. It's a Mancunian punk magazine, which is interesting. So I don't know what that was anyway.
That's one more 5-star than me. So don't. You know,
Okay, fair enough.
go putting it down. No, well, I mean that I know of. I should probably Google more often because there's probably some tiny magazine somewhere that went,
Loads.
"Oh, this was amazing." Probably not.
Yeah. Fortunately, I made a vow of never reading Edinburgh reviews. Unfortunately, I was with a venue who did it all for me and put them all on, and then I couldn't avoid it because it was my face from my own special designed flyers, and they were amazing. With the stars all on it. So, and also when you're flyering, you need to know because otherwise people go, "Oh, has anybody reviewed it? How many stars?" And you have to say.
Well, the thing is, I find, especially halfway through the Fringe, when they start just plastering on, like, you know, either paper over the top of, like, really expensive posters that say, you know, stars, I find that ruins them a bit.
It does ruin them a bit, but a good designer, I leave space for that. So you've got to leave a sort of, you know, 1.5 by 2-inch little gap on your flyer somewhere, which usually has, ideally not over a face or anything like that, but maybe if you've got any clothing in there or if you've got, I don't know, but there's usually a space where you can do that, and if there isn't a space, you should make sure there is a space for that, so that you can just staple on a review.
So you only have very good clients, is what you're saying?
Yeah.
We're gonna get
No, I mean, I often find that even, you know, the first time I went up to the Edinburgh Fringe, I was but a child, and I went up in 2002, and we, you know, we're in a play, but we got, I think, a 3-star review for the play because we were awesome. But there was a thing where, I can't remember who wrote the review, but it was, the actual quote was, "Why would such a talented cast do a play like this?" And so we cut out such a talented cast and stuck that on the flyers. But you know, so I think everybody, if you can get a review, which I know is quite tricky, getting the teenagers to come and see your show, but if you can get one, you should try and, you know, use it as best you can. And I think a lot of people do get reviewed. I think when I was there, I got, I think, 8 or 9 different reviews. I think, but I was with the Stand, so the Stand are very good at getting people in early.
Yeah, I was gonna say I wouldn't say that too much because a lot of I would say a percentage of this audience are people that do the free Fringe that struggle to get people in.
Well, it's all about, you know, press releases and everything else, and it's really just, don't just sit back. You have to really chase people more than your ego wants you to. And you have to write the good press release. And in your press release, you should include the image that you're using for your posters. And you should include information about you and why you're interesting, as well as why your show's interesting and why they need to pay attention to you. You basically, I mean, because I can't afford PR, so I'm assuming majority of people listening, if they're not with one of the major companies, can't afford decent PR, in which case you have to do all of those jobs.
Yeah, I completely agree. And for me, that's largely what this podcast is about. I am not banking on being with one of the large companies or large agencies anytime soon. And in a way, I don't want to for live work. I quite enjoy doing my own stuff for that. And as a result, I'm trying to learn more about what I should be doing for it. And I, up until now, have left loads of things to the last minute, like posters and flyers and things. And it's why I'm doing these interviews now, because it's great to get in early and discover what I need to do and what and also just because from your end, it feels like whenever I've gone to a designer before, I've just gone and said, "Hi, I'm doing this show. Can you make me a poster or a flyer?" And then there's no like dynamic, there's no relationship there, and there's no learning from what you've done. You just come back with something pretty and I go, "Oh, that's pretty," and you're like, "It's not just pretty, it's also got this really good bit here and the eyes drawn here, and you know, like I've managed to fit in this bit here that you made me put in because you said that it had," you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's very tricky. I find the biggest fault, particularly with logo design, is people say, "Well, I kind of want this," and so you kind of give them that, and that's not what they wanted. They wanted something else, but they won't. It's a bit like going to the doctors and going, "Oh, I've got a bit of a cold and I feel a bit run down," and the doctor going through all the symptoms with you, and as you're leaving going, "Ooh, and my dick's gone weird." You know, it's kind of the important bit usually comes right at the end where they say, "No, I don't want that design. I've got a very specific design in mind, and I'm disappointed you haven't been able to mind read." So for me, it just saves me a lot of time if you just say, "This is what I want," and I'm pretty sure I want this, and I don't care if you think it's crap. I mean, my philosophy always is that for me, graphics is a hobby. So I like drawing. I will draw stuff myself. And last year I got, I maybe won't say this actually. I won't. I basically, I charge if I want to do the project, that's how I adjust my, how much I charge, is basically. So if I don't want to do the project, I will charge you quite a lot. And if you want to go with me, that's great. I'll still put my 100% into it. But if I really want to do the project, I don't tend to charge you, hundreds of pounds. So it's a case of, for me, it's hobby. I'm not reliant on it for my income. So if I don't want to do it, I won't. Simple as. Does that make sense? Did I answer any question then? I don't think I did, but never mind.
No, you did. In fact, you half answered another question.
Oh, no.
It's all right. You only just sort of touch on other things and then leave it.
Okay.
What kind of shows do you like working on then?
I like doing comedy club logos quite a lot. I find that, and also podcast logos I really enjoy doing. I get a few painting commissions, believe it or not. My favourite one from it was the year before last now, because it's 2015. What happened? But yeah, from 2013, my favourite commission that I had to draw, paint, proper painting, was Alan Rickman riding a unicorn. And that's the sort of thing where I just go, yes, I'm definitely doing this. And because I put my stuff up with a site called Redbubble, which is amazing. If you paint or draw and have paintings and drawings you think are good, stick them up on Redbubble and they'll sell them for you on everything from iPhones to canvases to T-shirts and stuff like that. And all you do is put your percentage on the top, so you don't do any work. And that one's made me quite a bit of money, which is quite nice. Lots of people are walking around, well, not walking around so much, but they have Alan Rickman in their homes riding a unicorn. But I don't know enough people who are willing to buy an Alan Rickman postcard to make it worthwhile.
You've got the wrong audience. I want one.
Okay, well, go on Redbubble and buy one because you're a weirdo.
I'm not a weirdo. I just have a space on my wall.
Okay, fair enough. There's a lot of pictures of that. I mean, because one of the things I like doing, if you look at my notebooks, I think like a lot of male artists will draw beautiful young women in their 20s. I tend to draw sexy men in their 50s. So there's a lot of Robbie Coltrane, a lot of Alan Rickman, a lot of people like Christopher Hitchens back in the day. It's there's quite. I think, I don't have a theme, and then it's all kind of sexy old guys. But hey ho.
Well, there's got to be a niche for everything.
Yeah, indeed. And I do. I mean, like I say, for me it is a hobby, so I do spend a lot of time just drawing stuff for just me, and painting stuff for just me. I've got in my hallway at home. I've got It's 3 meters by 2 meters, and it's the opening title page of Andreas Vesalius's Anatomy of the Human Body, and it's massive, and I did it all in pen on the wall because that is the beauty of not renting anymore. Boom. So I've got it literally, it's floor to ceiling, and it's huge. And the original would have been about 50 centimetres by maybe 40 centimetres, something like that. It's not huge, but it's big. A3 sort of size, and I've made an A3 size fit a stairwell, and it's just a woman being cut open by Andreas Vesalius, and all of the physicians, from 14, where is it, 50, I can't even remember now, it must be 57 I think, looking over and having arguments, and their dogs and their monkeys, and there's a naked guy, and there's people looking down from balconies. It's quite fun. But I'm a big fan of illustrators like Piranesi, who just these amazing engravings. I don't know if you've seen any. He just basically imagined these epic scenes where you just have architecture that didn't exist at the time. It's like it's like modern Gotham City, but actually drawn hundreds of years ago. It's amazing, Piranesi. I do recommend. But that said, I like Bill Waterston, I like Hergé, so I like all sorts of illustrators. There's a really, really nice modern political cartoonist that I really like. She doesn't just do political cartoon. Her name's Eleanor Foreman Peck, and she's got amazing. She does the really good pictures of Boris Johnson in the Observer, I think. And Spectator as well, actually. I think she's pretty much everywhere, but she's really good. And she just does, very, very simple block lines and a lot of beige, and then really clever uses of colour. She's amazing. But yeah, and I think she's younger than me. The bitch. But yeah,
it's fine. If there's one thing that younger people are there for, it's to hate because
they're talented.
better than you.
Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, so in answer to your question, it is a hobby. It is. I mean, I'd consider it a hobby. So if there's a thing, if you come to me and say, "Hey, my software company needs a really classy diamond shape," I'm probably going to charge you more than you say, "I've got this really amazing idea for a show, and I've only got 50 quid. Can you help me?" And I'm like, "That sounds like an amazing idea for a show, and I want to help you." It's one of these things. Whereas a professional would go, "Well, these are my standard rates." I go, "Okay, these are my mate's rates because I want to do the project, and these are the standard rates." So, and the standard rates are a bit more expensive, but if I've got the time, I'll do it.
Cool.
So,
should you come and see the show in order to get a feel for it, or is that not necessary?
Well, I don't think it's entirely necessary. I do think it'd help. I think, because basically a lot of the people that I work with, like Matt Price, I was really pleased with the designer did for his 2014 show, The Merry Hill Dinosaur, because he was adamant that he didn't want his picture on it, and this is a big no-no because faces sell. Like I said at the beginning, it's the thing that you instantly look for. You look for the human connection in something. But he was very insistent that his face would only go on the back of the flyer, not on the front of the flyer. And it was a story about a mentally ill man who thought he was a dinosaur, and he actually lived in Merry Hill, a part of Glasgow. It's fantastic show. He got lots of 5 stars, I think. But yeah, and so he wanted a design for that, and immediately just the picture in my mind, because I know Matt's style of comedy quite well, was of this big stegosaurus sat in a bar looking miserable, but in quite a sort of Art Deco-y type of way, so looking like an old sort of 1930s, 1940s poster, and that worked really well. I had a few emails just off the back of that going, "Ooh, can I get a similar thing for this podcast or a similar thing for that banner?" So yeah, that was a really fun project to do, and it helped that I knew Matt's style of comedy. I knew it would be storytelling. I knew the sort of vibe he was going for. I mean, generally, I tend to work with people I've met because that's how they've heard about me. Because I don't, it's on my website, izzi.com, ISZI.com. You can see a few of my designs there. But generally, I use my internet presence to plug my comedy because that's where most of my income comes from. So, yeah, I tend to know the people I work for quite well. It's a bit different when you're working with podcasts because people who do podcasts and that sort of thing, some of them haven't actually made the podcast yet and are a bit like, "Oh, what should I do?" And unless you've got an understanding of what you're doing, it's probably not the right time to approach a designer about it. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, that's probably the same with shows. If you haven't, because although we have to register it like for the Fringe now,
yeah,
and the Fringe is in August, we're in January, February now, but we're in January. Let's call it January. I had my concept for my show in September last year at the very end of the Fringe, and I'm very lucky about that because I spoke to friends about it, and they said, "Oh, that's nice," but patronisingly.
Yeah, that's nice, dear. Well done.
That's nice. You carry on with that. That will not win you an award. No. But no, they were very supportive and they were very nice about it. But then I asked them, so are you doing Edinburgh next year? And a lot of them hadn't decided yet because they didn't know if they had a theme or they didn't have something to talk about or, you know what I mean? So it's kind of chicken and egg, it feels like.
It is a bit. I mean, there are more, there are certain shows which don't require, because you're using, it depends. If it's a stand-up show and the theme is largely you, it's very simple to get a good photograph which describes that. Whereas if you're doing a play or a sketch show or something more storytelling, it's very important. I think the design comes into it more, because with stand-up comedy, ultimately, a Bill Bailey fan, if Bill Bailey starts doing stuff, with no music in, I think Bill Bailey fans might still go, "Oh, that's interesting, I'll go and see it," and you still only need Bill Bailey's face on the poster. It would be nice, obviously, if you had the time to just have Bill Bailey smashing a guitar and saying "never again" or something like that. I don't know why I'm picking on Bill Bailey, but it's there are certain themes which you need to exaggerate if it's vital to the show. For example, if it is a show with a lot of swearing and a lot of stuff, but it's on in the middle of the afternoon, you really don't want to use cartoony logos that people might think, oh, that looks like a kid's show. You know, you want to think about it in that sense. But ultimately, if you're a stand-up comic, you can make a very decent-looking poster. I was very impressed with Elf Lyons' poster from...
the Underground story.
Yeah.
I can't remember what it's called.
I can't remember what it's called, but she was talking about the Underground and her love affair with Harry Beck, who's one of the designers of the Tube Map and everything else. And it was a great show. And she, I believe, I'm not 100%, but I think the main photo of her there was just a standard comedy thing. That I don't know which designer she used. It was a very good one. Who just cut her out and put her against an image of the Underground and everything else, but in a way that made it look like a 1950s Underground poster. And things like that. If you've got a good... I mean, basically, when you're taking images for your headshots and everything else, it's a very good idea to have a few against either a white or black background without too much, you know, shading behind, just because for designers like me, it's terribly simple to cut you out and then put you against whatever I like in Photoshop. Which I can hear other designers going, no, spend the money, make it look professional. But you can actually do quite nice images. I did one for a couple of poets who didn't have any photographs of them together. And the photographs they gave me were so pixelated and just really bad quality that what I ended up doing was turning it into a Game Boy thing. So I over-pixelated them even further, jammed them together, and then made them look like they were coming out of a Mario Nintendo background. So, I mean, things like that. It's amazing what you can sort of get round, and they were quite pleased with that because, it wasn't a particularly computery themed show, but it sort of, they were looking at being, what's the word? Retrospective, I want to say, but that's wrong. You know, they were nostalgic, and so the Game Boy, you know, in that lovely green that you had on the old screen. And nothing's in black, and so it looked quite nostalgic, and it kind of fitted in with their theme. But it was just out of desperation because I didn't have the images.
Fair enough. But that's kind of... I find some of the best things come out of, like, weird, you know, stumbling blocks in things.
Often.
You said that it's a big no-no, basically... Well, I don't want to quote you badly, but basically you were talking about having your face on the poster. Why were you against him not having his face on the poster?
Well, no, it's just that faces, you know, there are things which sell, and faces, because they instantly grab you because you're a monkey and you want to see other faces and everything. You see faces everywhere in curtains, what have you. That's what you focus on naturally. So you're going to look at a face, even if you hate that face, you're still going to look at the face because that's what you're programmed biologically to do. That's why having a face there is very good. The other way of doing it, if you look at old adverts of cigarettes and for alcohol adverts, there's often quite a nasty element to it. So if you look at Silk Cut, old ads for Silk Cut, it's basically, if you look at Silk Cut adverts, it's all about castration. All the images make no sense, but it's all about, you know, things getting cut off, tips of things getting cut off, you know, and they're quite disturbing images. And because they're disturbing, they stick in your head because you don't understand them. All you see is Silk Cut. And it makes you, because they disturb you fundamentally on a very base level, fancy a cigarette to calm you down. It's really clever. And so actually presenting an image which doesn't make quite much sense, to say something in the image is slightly upside down, that a lot of, you know, look at the New Labour, New Danger ads, which are still, you know, stick in my head. I was only a kid at the time in 1997, right? But they ripped through the politicians' eyes and put these devil eyes, which weren't even devil eyes, they were upside down eyes in red. They were really clever. It was just so disturbing, looking at it and trying to work out what was wrong with it and everything else, that it really focused your attention on it. And things which are slightly out of place and make you go, what is that? Make you look at something longer. And if you're looking at something longer, you're more likely to absorb the information. Is the theory. Whether this works or not is another matter.
Yeah. No, definitely. But I mean, the theory behind it is definitely sound. I know what you mean by. I can't remember. It's driving me crazy. The word you were trying to remember before, where you see faces in things.
Yeah, it's f. It's with a ph. Uh, I used to know it so much because it was actually in a set of mine, which is really annoying. Now I'm trying to remember the joke and I can't remember the joke even. It's too early. It's like
Sorry, I should have
guys, it is before 1 p.m, okay? It's before 1 p.m, and I was miles away last night and I had to drive and it's really bad. So yeah.
I very much appreciate your time, and
That's cool.
I'm so sorry.
That's all right. Don't you worry about it.
I was going to really quickly ask you a logistics question.
Logistics.
Well, I don't know how else to describe it. When you take photos or design a poster, do you still own the rights to that design or image?
Aha! This is the thing. Now, when it's mates rates, I say yes. So everything that's on my websites, I still own part of the copyright over because I've done it for cheap. And that's the thing we agreed. There are some things which I'm not allowed to mention, partly because I have worked for... I can say that, actually. I've worked for a multinational whose design department had a low budget and wanted somebody to do some stuff. And I quoted them what I thought was outrageous, and they paid me that. But I'm not allowed to ever mention or use, who that was and what they used it for. And occasionally I see it and I go, ha ha ha. Yeah, so that was lucrative but disappointing. But yeah, it's that thing. Because I'm not a professional photographer, I do not insist on being, quoted, and that's the thing. I do not consider myself a professional photographer in any way. So I am happy not being quoted on that. My designs as well, I don't think I've asked anybody to, mention who took the photos or who's done the illustrations. Obviously, I know, it's interesting with the kids' books. I'm not sure who owns that. I think because I got paid a flat fee, they own it now. I'm pretty sure. I don't know, you see, because like I say, I'm a job's worth. I don't, I'm doing this as fun. Certainly when I got the Alan Rickman riding a unicorn painting, which you can get on redbubble.com/people/Iszi, I said I. For that one, I did sort of say, look, because I'm doing this, because it's so silly for, I let's put it this way. I was in 3 figures rather than in, 4. I said, look, can you, I want the rights to sell this. Are you happy with that? And they were absolutely happy with that. So I still own the rights to that. But I know that photographers take it very seriously. And now you understand why, because it's a bit like somebody using your jokes on Twitter and not quoting you. It's just like, hey, it matters. So if you have got, Idle, I imagine, would feel very strongly about having her stuff, with her name on it, every time you use it. But like I say, my designs and everything else, I'm quite cool with, for me it's, because it's not, if it was what I was reliant on my income for, I'd be very, very differently minded about it. But like I say, it's a bit of extra pocket money if I've got the time. And if I don't have the time, don't get cross when I say no.
You have talked a lot about faces and people's attraction to faces and in posters, particularly trying to remember people they've seen. Are there any other, I wouldn't say tricks and hints, but are there any other theories that you know about in design that people could try and incorporate into their posters, or is it mainly that you know about faces that people should keep?
I think there are ways of portraying certain themes in a show. So there are fonts that we recognise as being childish. So if you're doing a kids show, it's quite easy to advertise that just by using certain fonts and styles that kids' TV's shows uses. If you're doing quite a serious show or a show you considered epic, you can use very similar design to movie posters, which is also, I do that quite a lot because there's certain colours which contrast and go quite well together. So it's the blues and the oranges. Loads of movie posters use blues and oranges together. I think, was it Trajan Pro as well as the font they use on everything, and Helvetica for the little bits at the bottom. Helvetica is very overused though. I get quite irritated by Helvetica. But often when I use a font, and the people go, I'm not sure if I like that font. I replace it with Helvetica, and they go, I love it. And you're just like, oh yeah, because people find Helvetica comforting. I think they just makes them look official. So there are certain fonts. Obviously, I mean, everybody says avoid Comic Sans, but there are other fonts like Helvetica which kind of get my goat slightly. Although I do use it in my designs because people ask for it. But there are certain it's certain colours and certain themes that you can get across. When I did my show in 2012, Iszi Lawrence's Whatnot, I very much stylised my show cover. So what it was me with my head lying on the table, with my glasses off, looking through my glasses. And so I put a green wash on that, so it looked quite grainy. I spilt a lot of dirt on it, as it were, in Photoshop, and I scratched it up. But I made my eye really... the saturation, I just popped on it so it looked, because my eyes are kind of like mud with bits of green in, but on the poster they look like bits of yellow and gold and red and brown and green and blue, and so it looked really almost rainbow-like and quite mesmerising. And I think that image is actually a very good one. The photography was by my friend Phil again, because like I say, he's cheap and she photoshops, and Phil's quite talented. But yeah, I'm just turning around to look at it, just going, yeah, that works. It works quite well. I stylised, I think, for a while. I'm not sure what my what's the word, avatar on Twitter is at the moment. It might still be or on Facebook. My Facebook one's the Z-List Deadlist new one, but the Z-List Deadlist old one was me against a white background, which is quite difficult because I've got white hair. But very overly stylised, so it's, I've almost cut myself out and made myself, because I wear a suit and tie, I tend to on stage, not all the time, but I tend to, and so I have that as a selling point, and I look, a bit Eurythmics-y, a bit Sue Perkins-y, and I try and bring that out as much so people remember who I am. I've always, when I'm on stage and just in general life, try and portray myself in a certain way, which is, I think, oh, I want to look like I've made an effort, but I don't want to be sexy. So, hey, no problem, Izzy. So I always wear a suit, or I try to sort of dress quite androgynous. So it looks like, so if people are there, because often you're doing a gig and there are people there in, I've done gigs with people with 3-piece suits in the room. And if you're there with jeans and a t-shirt, you come across as a dick. So the fact that I look like I've dressed up a bit, even if I'm a bit creased and shambolic, people pay attention and they don't judge you so much. But at the same time, no woman in that room is going to go, well, my boyfriend's going to fancy this kind of, what is that? Is that David Lynch look more than, me, because I've dolled myself up and I've made an effort, and I'm definitely more beautiful than she is because she's not corresponding with any of the stereotypically beautiful things. I'm very pale, I'm covering up my curves, and I'm lanky and taking the piss out of myself. And I think when I come to doing online stuff and poster stuff, those are the things I concentrate on, because you have to understand I am very beautiful, and it takes quite a lot to cover that up, but still make me look cool. And
Photoshop's good for that, though.
Yeah, it is good for that. I do.
You've done a very good job.
Thank you. But no, it is. It does matter.
If you could give one bit of advice, say people, they don't want to go with you for whatever reason, or you're too busy that you can't do it anyway.
Yeah.
You want to give one bit of advice to a couple of thousand comedians or performers, because I've not just got comedians on here. I've been getting some messages from people who do sketch and drama and all kinds of stuff, which is great. If you could give them one bit of advice in designing a poster, flyer, or anything for a Fringe festival or just a solo show, what would it be?
Honestly, and a thing which sounds so stupid, but I've seen it go wrong. Make sure you put the time of your show on. Make sure you say what your show is. If it is a stand-up show, make sure you have the word stand-up comedy on it. If it is a play, have the word play on it. Honestly, the amount of times I've looked at a poster and gone, not sure what that is. It looks popular. Don't know what I'd be saying. Not gonna risk that. That's just so basic and a boring thing to say, really. That and try. I mean, I'd also say that there are shows. There was a show once again a few years ago, probably 2006, something like that. They called themselves Nice Mum, and all of their advertising was just the words "Nice Mum." And I never found out what that was, but I remember that. But then, did that work? I don't know. I'm wittering now. I'd just say, okay, my main bit of advice for everybody would just be unification. So, if you've got a show coming up in August, late June, make sure your avatar, make sure, because particularly now with the Edinburgh Fringe, a lot of people buy their tickets before they go up. So make sure that you've got on your Twitter page the image of the show, on your Facebook page the image of your show, on your website the image of the show, just so that people know who you are and that you're associated with the show. So if they like you, they might come. And if they don't like you, they won't ruin your show by sitting through it and booing.
Great bit of advice.
There you go.
Well, thank you very much for coming on.
That's all right.
Also, because, I mean, you're giving up your time very early in the morning. And
it's not early in the morning at all.
It definitely is for me as well. So I don't know what you're. No, but so I really value your time, and obviously it means that I'd love to, give you back. I mean, like, where would be the best place for people to find you if they want to try and
Iszi.com, I reckon. Just go to Iszi.com. It's just a simple website, and it has all of my stuff on it, really. It's got my podcast on it. It's got my design on it. And all the design it's just like some, hey, look at this stuff. Hey, you can buy stuff here if you want to buy stuff here. Sort of thing I do. It's very casual, but that's how I want to be, I don't want to be considered a proper artist because I like proper artists. Whereas, I want to be considered a proper comedian because I hate comedians. That's came across like that. But never mind. I don't want anybody who's actually studied art to take me very seriously, I think it's more of a case of I do things which I like, and you'll see very heavy influences in there of other artists because I am a magpie for things. But
who are your favourite artists?
Favourite painter's probably Edward Burrough. I don't know if you know Edward Burrough. Really captivating. What I really like, I mean, I've nicked quite a lot of some of his style. I do much more photorealistic painting than he does, but often in my paintings I will put a black line round things to make them sort of pop arty and stand out a bit. And Edward has a very sort of like, he'll put stuff which looks very real next to stuff which doesn't look very real. He's just wonderful. Just Google Edward Burrough, Burraa. Sorry, no, Burra. I'm an idiot. And obviously, I mean, if you want to look at what makes amazing posters, I think probably this sounds weird. You could probably look at Mondrian. So he's the guy who does basically invented pixels in the early 20th century. He basically has, like, his early stuff is just like squares within squares with a couple of coloured squares. So it's very modern. He kind of invented conceptual art. He was, this was, I suppose you got Le Fontaine and things like that, but this was painting, conceptual art painting. And he basically divided canvases into, like, right now, on my wall, you can go on my website and see this picture. It's a picture of Jonathan Meades by the sea that I just did in a sketchbook and thought, that's quite good, and did it bigger again and properly. But I've printed out that picture and I've put it into different block frames. So I've got a square like below my desk. So I've got my computer, my main computer, and I've got my second screen, which is already quite blocky, and then I've got the different blocks behind with just bits of Jonathan Meades in it. And I don't think many people would have pictures of Jonathan Meades in their sort of office come living room, but it's pretty cool, in my opinion. But like I say, that's just for me, and I like it. And I've got that picture of Christopher Hitchens that sells very well on the other wall. But there we go. Yeah.
Soon to be on my wall as well.
Yay! Oh, you like that one?
Well, I have to see it first.
Okay, yeah. No, it's my best-selling painting. That one. I've still got the original, but it's on Redbubble, and that I make about 30 or 40 quid a month off that.
That's
People
amazing.
love that painting, and I'm just like, well, that's interesting. It literally, I think it must have been 2007, 2008, and I was just bored, and I just painted it in less time. I painted it in less than a day, and I don't know Can't remember doing it particularly. I remember a bit of it and getting frustrated with the jeans, but apart from that, and yeah, it's a friend of mine tagged, just sent me a message with her friend's boyfriend who's from America, who had it on his phone. So
That's amazing.
yeah, which is really nice. But there we go.
That was Izzy. I had so much fun talking to her. If you're listening, Izzy, I'm sorry for getting you up early. I realise you had a very late gig and you had to drive home last night, but we all appreciate your time, and thank you so much for being so honest and giving and just so cool with what you know about design and artwork and materials and branding. If you want to find out more about Izzy, she's got an amazing podcast that I subscribe to called the Z-List Deadlist, which you can find by Googling Z-List Deadlist, or there's links on her show notes on rcindustrypodcast.tumblr.com. You can also follow her on Twitter, links on the show notes, or just search her name, and obviously contact her if you want to do any work with her, and contact her through her website if you want to work with her. Part 2 of this is episode 8 of the podcast, which you can find on iTunes or on the website. Subscribe. Basically, if you subscribe, you'll get every episode into your inbox. If you can't subscribe to it in iTunes, essentially, but you do want to get like a nudge to tell you when it's up, and you want to find out about it before anyone else, you can join the mailing list, which you can do either on the website, there's a link on there, or you can go to bit.ly.com, which is bit.ly/Simon Caine has a mailing list. That's the URL. Because they let me pick whichever one I wanted, and I was feeling particularly imaginative. That's Simon Caine, spelled Caine, has a mailing list. If you go there, you can subscribe to just the podcast or everything I'm working on. And yeah, I'll email you about upcoming guests, as well as be able to ask some questions. The emails come from my personal email account. So if you want to communicate with me directly, I'm on my email most days. And I'm not always on every other platform. So as a result, that's probably the best place to get me anyway. If you really enjoyed it and you've got a minute, if you could leave it a review on iTunes, that'd be great. If you're one of the 17 people who have already reviewed it on iTunes, don't worry, your job is done. But if you want to be helpful as well, you can share it. Share the link to the website so that people can find this podcast and other ones that might interest them, or put it on Facebook. Basically, share the links. It really helps with download numbers and helps with guests. I keep saying it. There's no other way of saying it. And yeah, that'd be really helpful. Thank you so much for listening. And I'll see you in episode 8, which if you're quick, you should be able to find within about a minute of this. Bye.